Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, South Africa's parliament elects erstwhile Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as the country's new leader, succeeding Jacob Zuma. A professor of international law, Bola Akintariwa, examines the latest turn of events in South Africa and its implications for the rest of the continent. Vice President Yemi Oshibajo advocates stronger institutions to aid the war against corruption and insurgency. An FBI confirms security service and teachers have been warned about students who carried out mass shooting at a Florida high school.
And on business news tonight, Nigeria's Debt Management Office releases pricing and yields for the latest $2.5 billion Eurobond global debt offerings.
And on sports news, Nigeria's Super Eagles dropped one spot to 52nd in the latest FIFA World Ranking.
From Abuja, President Buhari officially commissions a drone locally fabricated by the Nigerian Air Force in Kaduna.
We begin tonight from South Africa, where Cyril Ramaphosa has been sworn in as the country's new president. He's to serve out the term of former President Jacob Zuma, who resigned yesterday after being recalled by his party, the ANC. After his inauguration, Mr. Ramaphosa says he'll work with all political parties to improve the lives of the people. Corruption and a rising unemployment rate have scored low marks for the ruling ANC over the past years, and these are priority areas the country will be seeking to change. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty De Beer reports.
I declare the Honorable Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa duly elected President of the Republic of South Africa.
And with those words, former Vice President Cyril Ramaphosa, 67, was elected as South Africa's new president to serve out the term of his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, who resigned yesterday.
Many of you have spoken about unity. You've spoken about patriotism. You've spoken largely about how we can all work together to improve the lives of our people. That has a great deal of resonance with I believe in and what I intend to do.
The opposition parties had something to say besides being ready to cooperate if the new leader puts the people first.
It would be erroneous of me to say that the problem of South Africa has been, in fact, Jacob Zuma. You, sitting on this side, couldn't even tell him what he'd done wrong. And I want to remind you what he's done wrong. It's thanks to this opposition party that, in fact, we laid charges against him for corruption. We ensured that he accounted on Nkandla, which you removed. We moved motions of no confidence, which you voted in defense of. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a Jacob Zuma problem, we have an ANC problem.
Earlier, the more militant economic freedom fighters staged a walkout of Parliament. They say the proceedings was an illegality. They want Parliament dissolved and the 2019 elections brought forward.
This Parliament is now continuing to do illegal things because there is a constitutional court judgment which said this Parliament failed to execute its responsibilities. And as a result, we feel very strongly that the Parliament should follow Zuma.
Beyond the celebrations, high up on the expected to-do list of the new president is what's been described as a genuine fight against corruption, the reduction of high unemployment rates, and doing much more to gain back the trust of the people in the ruling African National Congress. Fortunately for the people, this serve-out period may just be the much-needed tester. From the Parliament of South Africa in Cape Town, Betty De Beer, Channels Television News.
Well, South Africa's new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is a former anti-apartheid activist who was Nelson Mandela's favorite to succeed him as leader of the African National Congress and South African president. But the party overlooked him in a crushing blow to his political ambitions. 19 years later, Mr. Ramaphosa finally has his chance. Our next report takes a look at his journey to the presidential palace.
Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the 5th president of South Africa, was born on November 17, 1952. Previously an anti-apartheid activist, trade union leader and businessman, he also served as the deputy president of South Africa since 2014. President Ramaphosa was elected as the head of the African National Congress at the ANC's National Conference in Nasrec, south of Johannesburg in December 2017. He is respected as a skillful negotiator and strategist who acted as the ANC's chief negotiator during South Africa's transition to democracy. Ramaphosa built up the biggest and most powerful trade union in South Africa, the National Union of Mine Workers. He played a crucial role with Royal Mayor of the National Party during the negotiations to bring about a peaceful end to apartheid and steer the country towards its first fully democratic elections in April 1994. Today, Cyril Ramaphosa is not only the president, he is also well known as a prominent businessman and has an estimated net worth of over $450 million with 31 properties. He has previously held notable ownership in companies such as McDonald's South Africa, chairperson of the board of MTN, and member of the board of Lonmin. He is a member of the Venda tribe.
Now let's take a look at South Africa after Zuma. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs and a Professor of International Relations, Professor Bola Akinterewa. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you.
Now you see Ramaphosa taking over at a time when there's been so much infighting, public, shows of disgrace in terms of public squabbles in the ANC. Does he have a rough road ahead of him?
Certainly he has. The critical point to underscore is that Jacob Zuma is asking the ANC one question, to which an answer is yet to be provided, which is that what really is his offense? He does not believe he has committed any offense at the level of the ANC to warrant his being recalled. This is in spite of the fact that there are more than 900 charges against him. And the ANC is thinking that, look, at the end of the day, rather than bringing the ANC to disrepute, why not have him recalled?
Yeah, so could he still be asking what has he done with what you're saying now? If he has all these charges and he's been surviving each time vote of no confidence, he's always been known as one who has more than 9 lives. Could he still be asking that with all those charges, hanging over him?
Well, since he did note in his resignation speech, and he mentioned it twice in the opening of his resignation speech and letter, he raised the issue. And towards the concluding part, he did raise it again. True, he survived many of the cases taken to court. He also won. The issue now is that corruption charges are one thing. His charismatic character, leadership is another. He told the world that, well, they are going to miss a charismatic leader. But what did he mean by that? What has charisma got to do with allegations of corruption? Now, so in this case, I think that at the end of the day, he may still be querying why he was recalled. But he did promise to work, hand in hand with the ANC, because all his life he's been working.
Well, let's look at that promise to work hand in hand with the ANC. Some of his fiercest rivals came from the ANC. We saw that with Thabo Mbeki. We're seeing that with Zuma. Should Ramaphosa be wary of the political machinery within the ANC?
You cannot be more correct. In fact, he has to reckon with that factor. Internal division. The ANC is sharply divided as it is now. So one of his main challenges cannot but be to ensure how to reunite, the political party, ANC.
All right, quickly, let me ask you finally now, looking at the implications of this on the African continent and for us here in Nigeria. Under Zuma, we know what xenophobia was like, and he was criticized for not handling that very well. Are we hoping to see it better under Ramaphosa? What do you think?
Well, I do not think that the road is going to be smooth. The issue is more complex. You have the people, you have the government, and at the end of the day, in spite of the fact that the level of Nigeria's relationship with South Africa has reached the level of a binational commission, then and we are still having Nigerians killed one day after the other. Even the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants us to believe that the killings of Nigeria is more about criminal activities. Okay. So in this case, at the end of the day, it continues. But we can expect that if Nigeria is able to sit down and think ahead of the South Africans, the new president may be in a better position to address the issue more effectively. All right, Professor of International Relations, Bola Akinteriwa, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10 tonight. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is calling for strong social and institutional systems, especially by the nation's judiciary, that would aid the current anti-corruption war. Professor Osinbajo made the call at the inaugural lecture of the Kuka Center in Abuja. He says the key to stronger democracy is a merit-driven system, strong laws, and an adjudicative system that is immune to manipulation.
The activities that led to the resignation of Jacob Zuma as South Africa's president and the turnout of events in Kenya are some of the reminders that democracy is still young and fragile in Africa.
And before Your Excellencies take
at the inaugural edition of the Kuka Center public lecture, some leaders on the continent, led by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, are assessing the development of democracy in Africa. The Vice President challenged African leaders to take more deliberate actions towards nation building to address issues of security and conflicts on the continent.
It is clear that extreme inequality, weak systems of justice, the absence of the rule of law, lack of state capacity to maintain law and order put nations constantly under a real threat of coming undone. And that is the African story. Democracy, yes. Elections, yes. But the question of state building, the questions of the capacity of the state to deliver on its most important, role, which is security, which is ensuring justice and the rule of law, is often threatened because we simply have not invested enough in the institutions that make this possible.
The guest speaker is the President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo of Ghana. He urged African leaders to make the continent attractive for her youth, who risk their lives to cross the Mediterranean.
The urgent responsibility we face is to make our countries, our continent, attractive for our youth to see as places of opportunities. It means that we must provide education, education, and education. It means our young people must acquire the skills that run modern economies. There will always be those amongst our young people who would want to try their luck in foreign countries. When they are skilled, they will not have to risk drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. They would be headhunted and treated with dignity.
The consensus here is that while it is true that democracy is relatively young on the continent, there is hope because of the aspirations and prospects presented by young Africans who have shown the vigor to take up responsibility. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, pro-Buhari group stages protest in Abuja to persuade the president to seek re-election in 2019. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.